If I could have everyone take their seats, we'll get started here shortly. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you to the 2018 City Schools Hall of Honor induction ceremony. My name is Rediske, and I'm a 1981 graduate of Sydney High School, and I will be your Master of Ceremonies this evening. The committee and I would like to thank you for choosing to spend your Friday evenings with us today. And this is a special evening for us at the Sydney City Schools. Not only for the 4 inductees this evening, but also this marks our 25th year of the Hall of Honor. I would be remiss in not stressing how important it is that we do have the attendance that we do have this evening, so thank you very much. As in the past, we have an outstanding group of inductees present tonight. We have a philanthropist, we have a businessman, we have an educator, and we have a scientist. Each has made their mark in both their careers and their communities. The Hall of Honor Selection Committee always enjoys the duty of investigating and the merits and accomplishments of each of our inductees. Not only their professional careers, but their civic. The Selection Committee strives to make sure that the mission to honor the past, to inspire the future is met. There's a great deal of time and effort that goes into the selection process, so I'd like to quickly recognize the other members on the committee. There are some that could not make it this evening, but for those that are present, please stand and remain standing when I call your name. Audience, if you would, please hold your applause until everyone is standing. Devin Beer, my mentor on the committee. Lisa Beigel, who I count on so much. Greg Bonnerot, who's in charge of our fundraising. Mandy Croft, who represents the Board of Education. Randy Eccles, Gary Elsaw, Brooke Gessler, myself, Dave Ross, our historian, John Shue, our superintendent, Terry Thompson, and finally, not least, Doug Zimmer, the Sydney High School principal. Thanks again, all of you, for all of this event. At this time, I would like for Madison Frank to come forward. Madison is the senior class president, and she will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Madison. Next, I would like to introduce Chuck Price. Chuck is a 2007 Hall of Honor inductee and is also a classmate of one of our inductees tonight, Ardiss Luce. And Chuck will be delivering the invocation for us this evening. Let's pray.
Heavenly Father, we gather here this evening to celebrate the legacy and impact of the City Schools community. Lord, we are so grateful for you allowing us to be a part of a community that is rooted in faith, family, and connectedness to one another. Specifically tonight, we are here, Lord, to honor the 4 inductees into the Hall of Honor. Thank you for their giftedness, their contribution to so many, and their stewardship of all that you have bestowed upon them. Father, we also thank you for the school and community leaders who value and demonstrate the importance of preserving the legacy of the students, faculty, administrators and friends of Sydney City Schools in such a significant way. Now, Lord, we consecrate our time together this evening to your honor and glory, keeping in mind that all we have is because of your goodness and perseverance with us, your people. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Chet. I will now turn things over to the Sydney High School Chamber Choir, directed by John Young, for the singing of the national anthem. Thank you, Chamber Choir and Mr. Young. I would now like to introduce Superintendent John Shue.
Good evening and welcome to Sydney High School, the Sydney City Schools District's highest honor, the Hall of Honor Induction Ceremony. This is truly an event which brings great pride to Sydney City Schools. My name is John Shue, Sydney City Schools Superintendent. It's my honor to welcome you tonight on behalf of Sydney City Schools, Board of Education, administration, staff, and students. I want to thank the members of this Hall of Honor Committee for their hard work in putting together tonight's ceremony. They have worked tirelessly throughout this process to select tonight's honorees and ensure a successful program. This marks the 25th Annual Hall of Honor Induction Ceremony for Sydney City Schools. The superintendent who was so instrumental in starting this program back in 1993 was Lou Blackford. I actually started my administrative career in the late 70s when Lou Blackford was principal when I was assistant principal at Bridgeview Middle School. Lou served as Sydney City Schools superintendent from 92 to 95. He fought a courageous battle with cancer, passed away 5 years ago at the age of 72. Inside your Hall of Honor program is a page describing Lou's efforts in establishing this Hall of Honor. The Hall of Honor is one of the proudest moments, and induction into it is one of the most impressive honors we have here at Sydney City Schools. Those inducted into the Hall are excellent role models for all of us, and they have much to be proud of this evening. They're all past Sydney High School graduates. Raeburn Burns, 1892, Mike Herbert, 1985, Ardiss Luce, 1967, and Dr. Richard Rediske, 1970. These four individuals will be joining the ranks of those enshrined with the plaques here in the hallway of Sydney High School, and those honorees who will be inducted in years to come. These outstanding individuals have dedicated their lives to their career and community are being recognized for that commitment this evening. Congratulations to each of them for this highest honor. Dave Ross this week gave an inspiring presentation to Rotary Club. I believe it was on Monday. He talked about being on the committee 25 years ago when this Hall of Honor was first formed. and the first induction class of 10 members. He emphasized how proud he was to be both a Sydney High School graduate and being part of the Hall of Honor. Even though I am not a Sydney High School graduate, I've also been so proud to be a part of this program and the Sydney City School District. I hope you enjoyed tonight's celebration. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next, I would like to ask Laura Brady, Sydney High School Student Government President, to offer her remarks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Brady, and I am the current Student Government President and National Honor Society President at Sydney High School. Welcome to all the guests and to the inductees to SHS. We are proud to have you here and to celebrate the 25th Hall of Honor program. Congratulations to the late Raeburn Barnes, Mike Herbert, Ardiss, Luce, and Rick Rediske, and thank you for your gracious service to the Sydney City Schools and to Shelby County. Again, thank you for being at SHS, and I hope you enjoy this evening's program. Thank you.
Well, as you noticed, we kind of went through the first part of the program here pretty quickly, because now we're getting to the fun and exciting part of the program. Next, we will be having a video that we've all come to enjoy each year, and that will be introducing and showing the inductees in a different light. So at this time, the video was produced by the TV production students and Greg Snyder. So.
Sacred.
It's solemn.
A wonderful tradition. Celebrated.
It's growing.
Our 25th edition. Scintillating.
It's brilliant.
And very much exciting. Hopeful.
It encourages.
And community uniting. Outstanding.
It's exceptional.
It is our very best. Highest.
It's the pinnacle.
Above all of the rest. We welcome you tonight
as we induct our newest members.
This video will honor them. It details and remembers.
They've been so many places.
One thing in common though. It's SID-NEY.
We hope you enjoy the show.
Raeburn Barnes graduated from Sydney High School in 1892. Raeburn's great-grandfather and father were both named Thomas, and they fought in the Revolutionary War and Civil War respectively. Her maiden name was Epler, and her family originally moved just east of Sydney in 1815. Raeburn was born in Maplewood in 1873.
And a friend of Mrs. Barnes related that she once said Sydney was good to her, and she has a great love for the city and is concerned for the advancement of young people.
She had a short teaching career in Shelby County, but when she married Joseph Barnes in 1899, she gave up teaching.
I can tell you that she and Mr. Barnes had no children of their own, as was the custom in 1892 and later in the early 1900s. Married women didn't work outside the home, so after she married Judge Barnes, she resigned her teaching position.
Joseph was a judge, and he was also inducted into the Hall of Honor in 2003.
Judge Barnes was the local Shelby County Common Pleas Court judge. But if you know where the big courthouse is with the bell tower right in the middle of the square across from the spot, that's where he worked. After that, he was appointed to the 2nd District Court of Appeals. So he was an appellate judge from Shelby County, and the 2nd District Court of Appeals sits in Dayton, Montgomery County, Ohio.
Despite not working upon marriage, Raeburn remained active in the New Century Club, Book Club, Daughters of the American Revolution, and the Hospital Benefit Club. Raeburn survived her husband by nearly 20 years, and she herself passed away in 1964. When her will was read, all could see the tremendous foresight and care that she had put into planning beyond her time.
that upon the death of the last beneficiary, I direct my trustees to apply the rest of the residue, whatever's left, and the remainder of my estate into their hands for the following purposes: to provide a fund which shall be held, controlled, and invested to be used, both the income, that's the investment income and the interest that's paid on the money that's in, and the principal, the original gift, for the following purpose: to continue and carry into effect the provision set forth in item 15 of subparagraph so on and so forth below. And that paragraph says, to provide funds to worthy and deserving young people for the purpose of acquiring an education, as a means of defraying the, as Mrs. Barnes called it, the necessary and proper expenses incidental to attaining an education at an institution of learning of a college or university status or the equivalent thereof.
The Barnes Trust was first used in 1983. Since that time, more than 2,200 students have received a Barnes Trust student loan. More than $16 million have benefited students who live or graduated from a high school located in Shelby County.
I can tell you that just based upon the number of students that apply and the number of students and the amount of money that is available, that we've never turned a student down because we said they didn't need the money.
Today, the trust is overseen by 3 trustees: Thomas Watkins, Stanley Evans, and Norman Smith. Raeburn is the first member of the 1892 graduating class to be inducted into the Hall of Honor.
1, she had to have vision and some foresight. 2, she had to care about young people. And she also saw value in education. There was a book, and I think there was a movie called Pay It Forward, and that's what she's done.
Ladies and gentlemen, Raeburn E. Barnes.
Mike Herbert is a member of the graduating class of 1985. Growing up, Mike was more of a hands-on learner, and this led him to attend the Joint Vocational School where he enrolled in the Automotive Technology program.
I knew long ago I was going to be a hands-on type of guy. Back when I was a young kid, I'd always tear things apart, put them back together, make sure they worked in. It had the program I was looking for my future, which was auto mechanics. Didn't have it here. We had a lot of good instructors down there, a lot of good equipment. It was really beneficial to me.
One of his nominators, Tom Clark, says that Mike is the poster kid for the sophomore sitting in geometry class undecided on life's plans. Upon graduation, Mike started working as a gas jockey. He eventually worked his way up through the ranks to become the top mechanic at Sydney Auto Services. In January of 2000, Mike and his wife Shannon invested their time and money in creation of Autotech.
I kind of reached the level I wasn't going to go any further. My other job, I was working at an auto repair shop here in town. I kind of peaked at what they could actually advance me to. So this opportunity came around. The gentleman was retiring. So I went and worked with him, got a deal worked out, and got it all going in 2000.
Mike has been the owner of Autotech for the past 18 years and has seen it grow, receive awards, and also serve the community of Sydney.
A lot of the tough things to overcome is, the biggest thing is financial. You got to come up with a lot of money to get business going. You got to sacrifice a lot of times. There's times when I didn't take a paycheck, make sure the employees got paychecks. Once you get established, up to where I'm at now, I kind of come and go as I please. I got a good group of guys that take care of things for me.
Along with helping the community through Autotech, Mike has also volunteered his time in many other ways. Most notably, Mike has helped with athletic programs, especially those involving baseball. Mike has served as president at Sydney Amateur Baseball Commission and has coached at various levels. Mike has helped to make significant upgrades to the baseball stadium at Sydney High School.
There's always something to do out there. I try to help out because I know that the maintenance crew is short-handed a lot of times. They can't get out there and do the things we need them to do.
Mike has continued working with Autotech, athletic programs, the JVS, and his church despite being diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Although the disease sometimes limits Mike physically, it never has affected his work ethic and spirit.
The biggest thing is I just have to keep moving. The doctor says we can do therapy, medicine, things like that, but nothing's better than keep on moving. I have my good days, my bad days. You never know when they're going to hit you. There's some days when I can't physically walk correctly or talk right. So it gets frustrating over the years, but this thing's got to overcome. You can't let it get you down. You get mentally out of it, then you might as well, you're losing the battle then. The biggest thing is just keeping active, find something to do.
Mike has 3 children named Cody, Shane, and Michaela. He and his wife have lived their entire married life in Sydney.
At first, I I kind of overlooked it. I didn't, for some reason, I don't even know what the Hall of Honor was, to be honest with you. I walked by in pictures all the day and didn't ever pay attention to them. So then one day I stopped and really looked at them after I was told I was getting in there, and it kind of sank in how really, really meaningful that award is.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Herbert.
Ardiss Luce graduated from Sydney in 1967. After graduation, she received her Bachelor of Science in Education at Bowling Green State University. She then went on to Wright State University, where she earned her Master of Education in Art in 1993.
Since my last name was Willman, and it was a W, and everybody was seated alphabetically, I was always over there by the windows. So I hid behind a football player by the name of Joe Ward. I think that teacher, Mrs. Wilson, noticed that she couldn't see me over there. So she did some rearranging, and it wasn't alphabetical. And she actually, here's her desk area, or where she stood, sat me right there, and I'm like, ugh. I always depended upon everybody else that were always sitting here to go ahead and answer the questions. I didn't have to worry about it.
After stints in North Baltimore schools, Marshfield, Massachusetts, Troy, and Russia, Ardiss returned to Sydney in 1984. In all, Ardiss taught for 30.5 years, 20.5 of which were in Sydney City Schools. She retired in 2004 from Sydney City Schools. The testimonials of support and students that she has inspired while at Sydney are seemingly endless.
My dad said, here's a plan from Bowling Green State University, and you can be a teacher, an art teacher. And if you do this, I'll help you through it. And I said, I don't want to be a teacher. And so he said, I went away for a couple of days and came back and said, okay, I'll be a teacher, but I don't want to teach. And so when I got through it, which my dad was very good at forecasting, he knew I'd want to do it, and I loved it.
Along with teaching, Ardiss was also active as a class advisor, art club advisor, lip sync advisor, and prom advisor. Many of these titles required her to dedicate her own time in order to meet her students' needs and desires. She was heavily involved in the Muse Machine and helped make art a relevant part of students' everyday lives.
You had to earn money to have the prom, and I thought, let's make it easy. Let's do something where they lip sync it. And so it became a lip sync back in 1985. Jerry Allen, the principal, came up to me during the lip sync, and he even had to turn people away because he said, we're not having any more people coming here.
Ardiss has received many awards throughout her career. She was Wright State's top Graduate Student Excellence Award winner in 1993. She also won the 2004 Career Achievement Award through the Sydney Education Association. These, along with many other awards, show that Ardiss was appreciated both in her time of teaching and also after her retirement. Upon retirement, Ardiss ran her family business, E&M Realty, for 12 years. During this time, she also began running her own art gallery and studio. Ardiss has been operating her own gallery for more than 20 years. She also brings art to people through her website, ardiss.org.
Ardiss has been able to do all of this while battling breast cancer.
And at 5 o'clock the next morning, a voice came and said, Ardiss, get up. It's a brand new day. 3 days after I'd been told that I had cancer, that voice came again and said, Ardiss, get up. It's a brand new day. I was literally lifted up from depression and all the anxiety that I was going through, the negativity of thinking I was going to die of breast cancer.
Ardiss has 3 children named Yuri, Austin, and Brandon. She and her husband, Donald, have been married for 47 years and now have 4 grandchildren.
It's just wonderful to know that I'm being honored. It's a great honor. It's like a big thank you. They acknowledge that I did do some positive things in life, and I appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ardiss Willman Luce.
Richard Rediske graduated from Sydney in 1970. He was a part of the Project 60 program at Sydney and had many teachers that inspired him. However, it was a message from one of his greatest mentors, his father, that helped him lead him on to his career path.
When I was going to school, I'd always come home for the summer and we'd get a job at Copeland and we'd work in the factory and we could earn, almost as much money in the summer to pay for college. One year, there was a big recession going on and I couldn't get a summer job. And my dad said, well, you're interested in water, why don't you go to the water department? So I went to the water department and they hired me over Christmas to help set up some testing. And then they hired me the following summer to start a wastewater testing program for them.
After graduating from Sydney, Rick went on to attend Bowling Green State University and eventually to the University of Michigan, where he would earn his doctorate. His studies at these institutions helped him realize his passion of working with the environment, and in particular with clean water.
Looking at what I'm doing now, I had no idea back then what I would be doing, but I went through a really rough time in my junior year in college, and that was when they had the draft, and my draft number was 1 away from being sent to Vietnam. So I kind of sat back and said, what do I really want to do? I always like to play in the water, so I am going to make a career out of the environment.
Rick rose to the level of Senior Vice President and was in charge of 4 offices and clients that included many Fortune 500 companies.
Well, I actually worked 15 years in environmental consulting, so I was part of an engineering firm, and our claim to fame was cleaning up train wrecks. I started working in a chemistry lab and got really good at something called mass spectrometry, and then I went off into more engineering kinds of things.
He eventually took a pay cut to live a more active family life, and he started his academic career at the collegiate level. Rick has been working at Grand Valley State University as a research professor. In this position, Rick has had his work published in many professional publications. He's been recognized with several awards by professional organizations, and he has also been awarded grants totaling over $5 million.
Hidden in a dense wood, undisturbed it would appear for decades until we started digging into it.
It's pretty significant, yeah. Drums are not well thought of. It looks like it's some kind of a process waste from the tannery.
Some barrels with chunks of brown goo, perhaps he says, glue used to make shoes.
Adhesives typically have hazardous chemicals in them, so.
Target 8 also showed him layers of processed animal hides buried in the side of a hill.
Yeah, so you can pull up hides as you go down. I'm still pulling up hides. I'm about 2 feet down.
Rick's passion of working with water issues has also led him to work internationally in the countries of Ghana and Haiti. His major point of emphasis in these developing countries is to deliver clean water at the household level. Rick has 2 sons named Michael and Jeremy. He and his wife Diana remain active in their community in Allendale, Michigan.
It's really an honor because when you start looking at some of the people that graduated from the school, there's a Nobel Prize winner for the NMR. There's some really outstanding people that graduated. My class of 70 has some very outstanding people. To be recognized in your hometown is really exciting. My father and mother, of course, are very important. My father passed away when he was 70, and my mother was at her 101st birthday. She's at Ohio Living.
Dear Richard, I'm so proud of you, and congratulations for the honor. It is quite a wonderful thing happening. The best of all to you and your family. Congratulate you, Richard, and love you to pieces.
Ladies and gentlemen, Richard R. Rediske.
In the 25th year of inducting our best,
We stop for a moment and embark on a quest.
To appreciate this group so full of perfection.
Such amazing people with one common connection.
You all went through Sydney at some point in your ride.
You've helped to define the Yellow Jacket Pride.
You inspire current students to work hard every day.
to focus on your dreams and push obstacles away.
Prior to the speeches and before you conferred,
we'd like to don each of you a solitary word.
It won't do you justice. It's an attempt to be witty.
in an effort to describe what you've meant to this city. First up, Ardiss Luce. We give the word mold, both in shaping young children and creations you sold. In every part of your life, back from the very start, you painted us a picture to appreciate art.
To Rick Rediske, the word pure is best to describe both your heart and the water you test. From Sydney to the border to that state up north, we appreciate your care and your effort set forth.
The late Raeburn Barnes, we say the word provide. Through teaching and trust, you were forever a guide. The people you've helped, all those lives to enhance. Because of your care, so many had a chance.
To Mr. Mike Herbert, the word support we stress through Auto Tech, sports, and the JVS. The people you've helped and the things you've done. In baseball terms, you're a walk-off home run.
You all make us happy, bring a smile to our face.
The four of you have brought us together in this place. As we look to the future and remember the past.
It's such a wide net that Sydney has cast.
From Adams to Zimfer to Russell and Hall,
Slagle and Blackford, and that can be all.
Add 3 living members and 1 up in heaven.
Bring the Hall of Honor total to 127. Herbert, Barnes, Rediske, and Luce. You impress, you instill, you give us an excuse to look at those plaques, to stare and relive,
and to think of what this school has been able to give.
You're all Yellow Jackets, and that makes us so proud.
Welcome to the stage. Come look out at the crowd. Everyone cheer, clap your hands, set the scene. It's the Hall of Honor class of 2018.
Those that have been to the ceremonies before know that that's one of the highlights of the evening. And once again, Greg Snyder and the students of the TV production class, fantastic job. At this time, I would like all of our inductees to join us here on stage. Whatever order you want to say. As you can tell, we didn't practice that. Just because you're successful doesn't mean you can succeed. Our inductees spent time today at Sydney High School, interacting with the faculty and the students in a classroom setting. This allows the inductees to share the attributes and knowledge they have obtained over the years that make them successful. It also allows the students to see the variety of talent that Sydney High produces and also serves as a role models for the future. So next, I would like to introduce Dave Ross and ask him to come to the stage and give some words on behalf of our previous inductees.
First of all, to slightly deviate off script, I have to say something to these young people over here. Through my involvement with the sports world, there isn't anybody in here who's experienced the national anthem more than I have over the last 64 years. I've never heard it done better than tonight. Goodyear, Arizona for spring training and work for 30 straight days whenever you'd like. It's that good. Good evening, everybody. And I always say this, and it's how I feel. This is annually my favorite night of the year. Tonight, the Hall of Honor marks 25 years as a celebration of the Sydney City Schools. As John Shue said, I was on this stage at the first induction to represent my late father, who was in that induction class. What a special experience. I was elated that my alma mater had taken this step to provide both recognition and inspiration. Even before I joined the Hall of Honor Committee and was later inducted myself, I've always left this event feeling prouder than ever to be a Yellow Jacket. And yes, that will continue tonight as our ranks will grow from 123 to 127. This newest foursome enhances the Hall of Honor. I'm proud to speak on behalf of the previous 123 inductees in congratulating Raeburn Barnes, Mike Herbert, my lifelong friend, Ardiss Luce, and my former Ardiss softball teammate, Rick Rediske. They all reflect very well on our school district, and yes, consistent with the mission statement, they inspire current and future students. Raeburn, Mike, Ardiss, and Rick, on behalf of those who came before, welcome to the Hall of Honor.
Thank you, Dave. We will now begin the ceremony, and first of all, I would like to ask Carla Young, Executive Director of the Wilson Health Foundation, to introduce Stan Evans, who will provide reflections on our first inductee, the late Raeburn Barnes, a graduate of the class of 1892.
Thank you, Rudy. Thank you, Rudy. Testing? Okay, now we're good. Thanks, Rudy, for the third time. It's my pleasure to be here tonight on behalf of the Wilson Health Foundation and Wilson Health to honor the late Raeburn Barnes for her contributions to our community. Raeburn Barnes was a visionary who saw and recognized the need to give back to the community in various areas and is best known for her contributions to education. Not as widely known is Raeburn Barnes' acknowledgement of the need for health care in Sydney and Shelby County. At Wilson Health, we have benefited from her vision. She recognized the significance of an independent community hospital. Since her passing, Wilson Health has been the beneficiary of an annual contribution from the Raeburn Barnes Trust. To date, these contributions have been received and used for capital expenditures to help secure the future of Wilson Health. Personally, I am grateful for Mrs. Barnes' vision. I am one of the 2,500 students from Sydney and Shelby County who has benefited from the Barnes Loan Fund. This fund assisted me in furthering my education and eventually returning to live and work in Shelby County. At this time, it is my honor to introduce Mr. Stan Evans, trustee of the Raeburn Barnes Trust.
Well, good evening. We'll try that again. Good evening. There we go. Thanks. And I'm going to echo Mr. Ross's comments because Mr. Shue and Mr. Ross know what I do when I'm not practicing law. And other than David, I probably heard the national anthem more times than anyone else in this room also. So it's been a very inspiring beginning to the night. And I heard about you this morning at the Hall of Honor breakfast. You were the talk of the breakfast table. And so I just want you to know that, and you did not disappoint. Thank you so much. And before I go home, I wore this suit tonight because I didn't want you to make any mistake that the guy in the video was me. So I made sure that I wore the same suit that I'm sleeping in tonight. So there was no confusion, okay, over whether or not I am Stan Evans. Chairman Keister, members of the Hall of Honor Selection Committee, members of the City School Hall of Honors, members of this year's class of the 2018 Hall of Honor, Superintendent Shue, members of the Board of Education, administrators, teachers, students, and guests. Sydney was good to me, and I have a great love for the city, and I am concerned for the advancement of young people. Those words were spoken by Raeburn Barnes and served as both the foundation and the catalyst for what has become Mrs. Barnes' legacy, that being the Raeburn E. Barnes Trust. A 1892 graduate of Sydney High School, Raeburn was born in Maplewood in 1873 and moved to Sydney in 1886 at the age of 13. Raeburn taught in the Shelby County schools and during her adult life maintained an active interest in the community. As you heard in the video, she was a member of the New Century Club, the Book Club, the Daughters of the American Revolution, the Hospital Benefit Club, and St. Mark's Episcopal Church. Mrs. Barnes chaired the Comfort Bag Committee, a program by which each and every Shelby County resident who left home to fight for our country in World War I received a bag of miscellaneous items to comfort them on their journey. To the current generation, the concept of pay it forward is probably based on a film from the year 2000, adapted by a novel written, or from a novel written by Catherine Ryan Hyde by the same name. The concept is simple and straightforward. The phrase pay it forward is an expression for describing the beneficiary of a good deed repaying it to others instead of the original benefactor. Benjamin Franklin recognized the concept in 1784. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote in 1841, "In the order of nature, we cannot render benefits to those from whom we receive them, or only seldom. But the benefit we receive must be rendered again, line for line, deed for deed, cent for cent, to somebody." Woody Hayes, who we all know, is best remembered for winning 5 national titles, that's 5, and 13 Big Ten championships, that's a 1 and a 3, 13, in 28 years as coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes. When he gave the commencement speech, his message was, you can never pay back, but you can always pay forward. Mrs. Barnes realized the best way for her to express her love for Sydney and her concern for the advancement of young people was to pay it forward. And has she ever? In her will, made in the year prior to her death, Mrs. Barnes created a trust to, in her words, be held, controlled, and invested for 2 very specific reasons. The first, to provide a $1,000 per year donation to Wilson Health, as Carla just described. And 2, to provide funds to worthy and deserving young people for the purpose of acquiring an education. Quite significantly and insightfully, Mrs. Barnes also directed in her will that the funds provided, first, shall be a loan, evidenced by the recipient's agreement to repay the loan at the earliest foreseeable date, and second, must be used by the recipient to defray the cost of obtaining an education at an institution of a college or university status or the equivalent thereof. Realizing that the cost of higher education would increase, Mrs. Barnes expressly gave the trustees the authority to determine the amount of the loans, and she made sure that no restrictions are placed on the loan recipient's course of study, institution attended, or as she called it, the character of the recipient's education. Barbara and I are witness to that. Our son, Stephen, also happened to go to that school up north, where he got his bachelor's degree, and the Barnes Trust gave him a loan. What started as a former teacher's love for her community, her caring concern for the advancement of young people, and her recognition of the future role that education would play in their lives, with a nod of her head and the stroke of a pen, Raeburn Barnes paid it forward by creating a community asset that has made both remarkable progress and a significant impact on the lives of many. Mrs. Barnes' induction plaque tells it all. She has helped thousands of students with millions of dollars, and indeed she has. Since the first student loans were made in 1983, through academic year 2016-17, the Raeburn E. Barnes Trust Student Loan Program has approved $18,835,545 in student loans to 2,511 individual students who collectively have taken out over 7,500 individual student loans. When the trust first began making loans, the maximum amount of each loan was $1,500 per year, and the student borrower was required to have previously completed at least 1 year of college. Well, that has changed. The maximum amount of each loan has steadily increased, first to $2,000, then to $2,500, and now the trustees have settled on annual loan amounts of $3,000 and $4,000, depending on the student's circumstances. And by the way, the trust now lends to freshmen in college, first-year students in technical training programs, and graduate students under certain circumstances. The current 2017-2018 academic year hallmark for the Barnes Trust Student Loan Program. For the first time since its inception, the trust has lent over $1 million in a single academic year. Today, the trust is managed by Tom Watkins, a Hall of Honor inductee, Norm Smith, and myself, with the total amount of student loans outstanding being right at the $4,700,000 mark. The initial trustees that Mrs. Barnes handpicked are three names familiar to longtime Sydney residents: Joseph B. Cook, H.E. Krim, and E.J. Garnhouse. In between, Clayton Kirchhoff, Bob McReynolds, Paul Gahagan, and Eugene Elsaw dedicated their time and talents to serve as stewards of Mrs. Barnes' tribute for the community she loved and the young people for whom she was concerned. No chronicle of the creation, progress, and growth of the Raeburn Barnes Trust Student Loan Program would be complete without special mention of former City School Superintendent Roger McGee, who was the Trust's first loan administrator. Now there are four. I continue to hear Roger's stern voice, either reminding or admonishing, based on your point of view, that first, the Barnes Trust is not a bank. Mrs. Barnes' purpose for the trust was to help students, and although the trustees cannot give trust funds away, don't forget that if a post-high school education was affordable, students wouldn't need a loan. Since the trust computer software has been able to track loans by school from just about the year 2005, I believe you'll find the following information of interest. 176 graduates from Anna High School have been loaned $1,308,868. Fort Laramie, 173 students, and must have made a significant outstanding achievement or contribution in a vocational field of community service and/or a philanthropic endeavor. For Raeburn's keen vision, for acute recognition of a developing need, for love of Sydney and concern for the community's youth, and in recognition of Mrs. Barnes' willingness to pay it forward, the Hall of Honor Committee could not have selected a more deserving individual. It has been my honor to acquaint you with Raeburn E. Barnes and the legacy she has given to the community, and it is my distinct pleasure to welcome her to the 2018 class of the Sydney City Schools Hall of Honor. Accepting Mrs. Barnes' induction plaque is Kelly Barker, an elementary teacher in the Sydney City School system, who, if my genealogy is correct, is a fourth cousin of Mrs. Barnes. Kelly's father, Steve Hubble, our retired Shelby County engineer, is one of three grandsons of Samuel V. Hubble, the first cousin of Raeburn's husband and Hall of Honor member Judge Joseph Barnes. I give you Kelly Barker.
Being a former graduate of Sydney High School and a teacher in the City Schools, I'm very honored to accept this, and I hope that someday that I can leave an impact in the Sydney City Schools and also be able to pay it forward. Thank you.
Next, our second inductee is Mike Herbert, a graduate of the class of 1985. Mike will be introduced by friend Tom Clark.
Would my helpers please pass out the lineup card? Being a baseball guy, I thought it would be important to have a lineup card. The topics we're going to discuss prior to his introduction. My role tonight is to introduce Mr. Mike Herbert, number 125 in the Hall of Honor. Before I enlighten you, I need to tell you about the nominating team. Leading off for us is Mr. John Guy. He brings speed to the top of the lineup and laid a solid foundation of Mike's success. In the two-hole resides Mitch Hoying, with his bat control and willingness to sacrifice for the greater good, wrote a stirring essay with this quote, "Mike's the kind of guy where it doesn't matter who gets the credit as long as the job gets done." Our number 3 hitter is Paul Lors. Paul's from Florida and gave Mike his start in media production and saw him complete several pamphlets and a number of how-to videos. Our cleanup hitter, the most powerful swinger, is Tom Martin. He smacked a grand slam in his personal reference, providing a snapshot of Mike's early years when he was an ambitious mechanic with a dream of entrepreneurship. Our number 5 hitter is Chuck Fridley. Chuck came to the team in a trade for 2 prospects. He taught at the JVS for over 215 years. He recollected Mike's high school years with humor, saying Mike likes fast cars, fast times, and slow books. But was a top-notch mechanic. Our 6th spot is being held by Mr. Tim Clayton. Tim cleared the bases, spotlighting Mike's attributes of patience when teaching baseball fundamentals to 8-year-olds, an unending work ethic, and his willingness to open his purse strings. That leaves the spots 7 and 8 open. We're going to have tryouts at 8:30 in the gym, and we know if you hear Mike, in the 9th spot is myself. I'm the starting pitcher. I was talking to my kids on Monday, seeing if I could get them to come. And one of them asked how important this was. I said, well, I'm wearing black socks. She said, Brandon, we gotta go. He's wearing black socks. Mike Herbert is a multifaceted individual. He's not an honoree because of his business acumen, but he could be. He's not an honoree because of his philanthropy, though he could be. And he's not number 127 because of his authorship, mostly because he wrote a book before he read one. Mike Herbert is a Hall of Honor member because he took an indefatigable work ethic, parlayed with a razor-sharp mind to become a lifelong learner, a skill that all of us can strive to attain. Mike started as a gas jockey and became a top mechanic by the mid-90s. In January of 2000, the Edco business at the Y of Fair Mill Creek came open, and he and his wife Shannon purchased it. Over the next 18 years, it was voted as the top 3 in Sydney Daily News Reader's Choice, received a 50 out of 50 Facebook rating of recommendations, and placed 2nd in a 7-state auto contest. As a community volunteer, he's been heavily involved in the baseball program, both youth and school. He's given generously to theater, CASA, Shop with a Cop, Carter Fest, a fundraiser that's near and dear to the family. He's also served on the UVCC advisory board, written books, made training videos, and I would like to close with this. I can't speak highly enough of Mike Herbert and his example of success. I believe he could be the poster kid for the sophomore sitting in geometry class, undecided on his life's plan. Students at SHS can identify with Mike, As they witness how he continues to realize his potential, they might come to understand and discover their own. Mike Herbert.
I want to thank Tom again for the great introduction. If you don't know Tom, you owe it to yourself to spend a few minutes with him tonight and meet him. You'll quickly find out how lucky we are to have him as part of the Sydney High School. Tom and I first met at YMCA. We both signed up for a new program that we were trying to get started. It was a therapy program for Parkinson's. As you may know, Tom and I both have Parkinson's. We quickly got to know each other and found out how competitive he is. Everything we did, he was always trying to be first, even if he had to cheat. You see, with me being 51, Tom being 63, I wasn't going to let him beat me at anything, and he was not going to let me beat him. It turned out to be great for both of us. Anyways, on how we got here tonight, all of us in Parkinson's class typically meet, walk around before the class starts. And my wife says gossip, but really we're fixing world problems. One day, Tom and I were walking before everyone else arrived. He shared with me that he and Mitch Wang were interested in nominating me for the Hall of Honor. I said, that's nice, and just kept on walking. In fact, I didn't even give it another thought for a few days. Sometime later, Tom mentioned it again, and he asked if it would be okay with me. I said, yeah, it's fine. And went back to what we were talking about. Later that evening, I told Shannon, my wife, Tom and Mitch were nominating me for the Hall of Honor. And she said, that's nice, but what is it? I responded to her by saying, I was hoping you knew because I don't know. So before I embarrassed myself, I figured I'd better look into this and find out what it was about. I quickly realized that I walked right down the hall every time I go into a booster meeting or a sporting event. So one day I stood there and looked at all the plaques on the wall, and it really hit me how special this award really is. I'm very fortunate that I've been given this award. I will never forget this evening, and I thank Tom and Mitch for nominating me and the Hall of Honor Committee for voting me in. It's truly an honor to have my plaque hanging next to all the people who came before me. For those who don't know me, let me give you a little history about myself. If you knew me in high school, you'd bet money that there was no chance I'd be standing up here in front of you today. You see, I was not a role model in school, nor was I a standout athlete. In fact, I was not involved in anything at school other than finding the quickest and easiest way to get through my 4 years here. There was no chance I was going to consider going to college either. I was more concerned about running around in fast cars. When I went here, we needed 18 credits to graduate, if I remember correctly, and I was not going to get any more than that. And rest assured, I was going to pick the easiest path. I needed math credit, well, there was college prep classes and there was basic math. You can guess what I took. Basic math. We needed communication credit, and rest assured I found the easiest class, which I think was basic communication. Then there was also a gym class. You mean I get a credit for playing dodgeball? Let me take that class twice. Any credit I need, you could bet that I found my easiest class and went with it. Anyway, who's ever going to need this stuff? What was I wrong? Since graduating, went back to school for math, electronics, speech, and so on. I've attended countless hours in training directly in automotive. You see, you never know which path in life you're going to be going down. A little more history about myself. After I graduated, I went down a variety of different roads. Even though they were all still in the automotive field, they were still different paths. Some of you remember this, as Tom mentioned earlier, where I got started at. If you remember this, you're showing your age. I started off pumping gas when there were still full-service gas stations. Some of you remember that, some of you won't. When the customer pulled in, the bell would ring, so I'd go and fill their gas tank, clean their windows, check their oil, and so on. After that, I began my career as an automotive technician. While in that field, I branched off into many different areas. I've been an automotive trainer. I've written numerous manuals related to the automotive field. I've also done some training videos for a company in Florida. I sold automotive equipment. And in the year 2000, I was opened my own shop. In the year 2000, I competed in a contest put on by ECDOCO to test your diagnostic skills. It covered 7 states, and I finished 2nd place. So you can see I quickly realized that maybe I should have taken school a little more seriously. As many of you know, I put a lot of time in the baseball program. Many people ask me why I stay around so long after my sons graduate. It's because I truly love it. I really love the game of baseball with high school and into youth ages. Many of you know that I've spent over the years, I've spent countless hours of my life in high school baseball. Started with my oldest son, Cody, down at Custom Border, roughly 19 years ago. Then I went back through with my next son, Shane. I'll never forget how I became involved with the school baseball program. In 2011, the high school coach asked me if I could handle the summer acting team for him. I told him I'd be glad to. One day before we got started, I received a call informing me that there would be a coaching change in high school and the keys for everything are in the shed. I said, hold on a minute, this is more than I signed up for. I was thinking to myself, what do I do? How does all this work? This is more than I planned on. Unfortunately, the new coach, Billy Schaffner, called me and informed me that he was a new coach and wanted to meet up with me. So we met, got a plan together, and as time went on, he and I talked about the future of Sydney baseball and things we'd like to see happen. It turns out that we both had kind of envisioned a lot of the same things. One of the first things we talked about, he and I were talking one day, and he informed me that the school had planned on moving some of the fence closer to the field. They had allocated $4,000 for the project. I looked at the field and told Billy, if you're willing to help me, we can do this without costing the school a dime. Well, shortly after that, he informed me we got the job. I said, great, what do we do here now? I was hoping they kind of just going to brush it off the side and let us go on. But we got started with doing it. Everything went good as far as pulling the fence down. We got that put the part down. And then we got to the fence down, started pulling. And then we got to the fence poles. When we got the first one hooked up to it, we went to pull it out on the ground and did not move. Would not budge no matter how hard we tried. We tried and tried and it would not go. We looked at each other and said, in other words, oh crap. Now I know what to do. I'm sure there's more said than that, but that's kind of the edited version of it. Then after a while, somebody come by, I don't remember who it was, but they kind of come by and showed us we were doing it the wrong way. They showed us the proper way to do it. Quickly got it done. Things were pretty easy after that. After that, we learned long and hard before we opened our mouth again. Since then, we've come a long ways. For those of you who are involved in or had kids playing baseball, you know how our field was in need of several improvements. We've come a long way. Here's a list of some of the things we've done, improvements we've made. New dugout or bleacher, or new benches in the dugout, drinking fountains in the dugout, water access for the field, fix the bullpens, new bleachers for the stands, with cement poured for that to make it look a lot better, a new PA system. And probably the biggest project we accomplished was a couple years ago. We raised roughly $25,000 to redo the infield completely. And then in this following year, we started working on the outfield. Our next project is we're trying to get off the ground and finally get some batting cages put out there for the kids. And that's probably one of my last projects here before I probably step down. I'm kind of proud of where we ended up at, but I'd like to go a little further, but it's kind of where we're ending up at. As I start to wrap things up, I want to make sure I recognize some special people in my life. There's one thing that I learned a long time ago. You surround yourself with people who truly care about you and want you to succeed in life. If you do this, there's nothing you cannot overcome. As many of you know, it takes good parents to guide you through life when you're young. Sometimes we have good parents, sometimes we have not so good. Fortunately, I've got a great set of parents. I can say this, as the old saying goes, you can choose your friends, but you cannot choose your family. I can say this, my family has had our ups and downs, but we've always stuck together. There's one thing that they taught me over time, and I guarantee if I asked right now, they would not know what it was. They taught me that there's nothing you can do, there's nothing that you can give that is more valuable than your time. And to this day, my parents said, give and give and give. I thank them for being a great role model for me. You see, they've not only watched me succeed in life, they've also allowed and watched me to fail at times. As you know, it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up and find you as a person. Next, I want to recognize my aunt and uncle, Dick and Julie White. They have had such a positive influence on my life. They're my second set of parents and have always been there for not only me, but anybody else who needs their assistance. And there's my sister, Melissa, an SHS graduate, and her husband, my brother-in-law, who is not a Sydney High School graduate, but we won't hold that against him. No matter what I need day or night, they are always there for me, or anyone in the family. We've always had a great relationship as adults. Now, on the other hand, when we was kids, there was a few instances still under investigation as to what really happened, who started what, and so on. She had some Barbie dolls. Somehow they got their hair cut off. I don't know how it happened. It happened. They're still trying to solve that case. Then there's my wife, Shannon. We will be celebrating our 30th anniversary this year, and that is a great accomplishment in itself. She's an amazing woman and has always been there for me. There have been many times when I've been bad to her, but no matter what, she's been there for me. If you want to know the truth, she's probably responsible for a lot of work done at the baseball field. You see, any time I'd bother her, she would just look at me and say, "Don't you have something to do at the ball field?" Then there are my 3 children. My 2 sons are graduating of SHS, and daughter will be graduating next year. My oldest son, Cody, is now in the Air Force, and at the time I wrote this letter, he was not going to be here. Well, about midnight last night, he came in the room and woke me up out of bed and said, "Dad, I'm here." It was a great surprise. I'll tell you this, my kids have done many things that make me proud of them, but none of their accomplishments are bigger than my son joining the Air Force and graduating from boot camp in the top 10% out of 700 graduates. What makes it so special is he was the second oldest one in the group of 700. He was 24 years when he went old, when he went in for the Air Force. And as a lot of you know, 24-year-old is considered an old recruit. So for him to step up and do what he's done, I'm really proud of him. Then there's Shane, who's the first person in our family to attend college. He's going to Hocking Tech, studying wildlife management, and to watch him find his true calling in life is amazing. I'm really proud of his son. Then there's my daughter, Michaela, who will be attending college to work with special needs kids. That in itself takes a special person. I listened to her tell us about her day with the kids at school, and it's very special. You can tell she truly loves it, and more likely she's found her calling in life also. We're proud of you too, sis. Before I finish up, I'd like to recognize a group of people that really mean a lot to us, or a lot to me. As I mentioned earlier, I'm in a therapy program that's why I'm safe for people with Parkinson's. We meet every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. The program consists of people from the age of 51 up to 77. I can tell you this, I hope that I can get around like these people do when I'm in my 70s. They're really an amazing group of people. I'd also like to thank our newly married instructor, Julie, which I saw sneak in there, I think, somewhere a little bit ago. She pushes us to reach our full potential every time and will not let us quit. She will be moving soon, and I'm sure that everyone in our group will agree that she will truly be missed. In closing, I again like to thank Tom and Mitch for nominating me, all the people who wrote letters, and the committee on my behalf, and the committee for voting me in. I can truly say it's been an honor and a privilege to be voted into the Hall of Honor. Thank you for attending tonight, listening to my story. I look forward to visiting you after the awards. Thank you.
Our third inductee this evening is Ardiss Luce, a graduate of the class of 1967. Ardiss will be introduced by former student and friend Joni Dunn.
Hello. My name, like you said, is Joni Dunham. I've been an art teacher for 13 years now, and it's a pleasure to be up here tonight on behalf of the biggest inspiration of my career, Miss Ardiss Luce. You see, students walked into her classroom every year expecting to create, to learn about art, but Ardiss, she did way more than that. She looked for the good in every single student that walked through her door on a daily basis. She saw potential in every single one of us, and she shared a very special energy that she still holds today, that not only inspired our art, but our overall confidence. Ardiss got us to see through a whole new lens the right side of the brain. And being an art teacher myself, I can say that's not an easy job to do. When you walked into our classroom, it was just like being in a whole new world. You never felt judged. You took pride in your art, you took pride in the hard work that you put into it, and that made you feel powerful and successful. It's still vivid in my memory that one day, my senior year, I walked up to Ardiss and I said, I don't want to go to any of my other classes. I just want to stay in the art room all day, every day. And she paused for a moment and she looked back at me and she said, do you realize what you just said to me? You want to be an art teacher. And from that day forward, she instilled in me that I could touch the lives of so many people, so many kids, so many students, just like she's done today. And I knew instantly that's exactly what I wanted to do. So this nomination tonight, it's just a small token to thank her for the true inspiration she was to me in my career and continues to be to me and to lots of others. So to end it, congratulations, Ardiss. This honor, it's well deserved.
Wow, that's pretty nice. I want to start off by saying thank you, Joni. That was superb, and I'll try to live up to it. And I think also there's several other of my students here I see, and many that have helped me just by writing a letter of recommendation for this Hall of Honor. I thank you so much. I thank also all of the Hall of Honor committee members and all the people that have been involved in this Hall of Honor, past and present. And Lou Blackford was my teacher for bookkeeping. He sat me in the front row. He said I wore short skirts, so I might as well put you in the front. But anyhow, he of course was just kidding. Maybe. He told me that later on when I was a little older. Eventually he became my boss. He was the superintendent who hired me back into the school system in 1985. And I'd like to thank my wonderful husband, Don, and his brother, Brian, who flew in here from DC. And I'd like to thank my children, Yuri, Austin, Brandon, and my 4 grandchildren, Bryden, Jace, Asen, and the last one, Navoya. They decided to have unusual names, right? I can't go on without thanking my mom and dad, because my mom would be really upset. So Mary and Ed, thank you very much. As well as my grandmothers, Olivia and Mabel. And Olivia used to love to say, I taught Ardiss everything she knows. And actually, looking back, she was absolutely correct. I had 3 brothers, and I dearly love all 3 of them, and I thank them very much. As I can remember back, most in elementary, we had art teachers like Mrs. Dodd, Marguerite Dodd, was our kindergarten teacher. And she was also very artistic, and she was probably my first art teacher. Mrs. Wright, Mr. Joe Creviston, and Mr. R.C. Cromer. And I'd also like to thank my forever friend, Sandy Seal, who made the trip down from Huron, Ohio, as well as her sister Sally, both graduates of Sydney High School. And also I'd like to thank my dear friend Bonnie and her husband Mike Goffney. They've been inspiration in my life. It is my distinct honor and privilege to address you tonight. I want to tell you, I have been a very lucky girl. I have been blessed abundantly. I got to create art all day long with young artists, my students. I couldn't wait to get to school. I skipped to work my whole life, and I always had a smile on my face. You know, I remember a story told by Mike Peters, the cartoonist. In his 7th grade year, he got caught doodling and looking outside the large classroom windows. And the teacher came by and snapped at him and said, "What are you doing, Michael? Don't you know you can't draw cartoons your whole life?" Well, he did. Mother Goose and Grimm. The secret to teaching art is to help the students to change the way they see, to take these blinders off and really see. Many students actually came to my classroom and told me, "I can't draw." Maybe some of you might feel that same way. This is quite amazing, because when you think about it, all toddlers can draw. They are expressing themselves when they find that media laying on the table, left over from maybe an older sibling or their parents themselves. They grab those crayons and those markers and those pens and there's paint, and on to the table they go, on themselves, on the walls, on the floor, when they first begin to create their art. Did you know art is our first language? Unfortunately, messages from good intended people, David, in our childhood begin to inhibit us. Most of them say, "What is it? You know? What did you draw there? It doesn't look like anything to me." Well, when you don't understand the art, it really is best to say, and I hope you'll use this, "Tell me about your picture." Those little ones will give you a very detailed story about their art. Always look for the good in people and in situations. Give positive feedback. It goes a long ways. Something like, "Wow, your art is beautiful." Put it on the refrigerator. They'll feel great. Teachers strive to educate the whole brain of their students, right and left. My personal goal was to get my students to change the way they see, to see with the right, I used to say right and correct side of the brain. This concept is hard at first to understand because the left hemisphere is so dominant. This is the side that we use talking outside into the world. I mean, outside, right now, like I'm talking. Quit daydreaming, you're on the right. Step back over here, on the left. Did you know the left wants to actually control us? But the right hemisphere has a voice inside of us, a quiet voice. This is the side you need to use to see as an artist sees, or as artist sees. Michelangelo saw his David in a block of marble before he ever began to chip away at the stone. It was said that other artists rejected this particular piece of marble. They just couldn't see what possibilities this stone offered them. My students, and there's many of you here tonight, and I thank you for coming, they visualized their creations in thumbnail sketches. Remember, at least 20, right? To paint a painting on a blank canvas, to draw an image on a blank piece of paper, to select a block of wax for jewelry. They began to see their creations emerging. And it was wonderful when my students looked at their art seriously. Of course, I made them look at it that way. They realized, and I told them, that they had become the artist. Their blinders were taken off, assisted by the quiet voice of the right side. What does it mean to me, this induction to the Hall of Honor? Wow. My quiet voice has been heard. As a student and as an educator for my beloved Sydney City Schools. Seeing is believing. I wish you all a brand new day.
Our fourth and final inductee this evening is Dr. Richard Rediske, a graduate of the class of 1970. Dr. Rediske will be introduced by friend Rebecca Jones Wilson.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It really is such a pleasure to be here. I'm Rebecca Wilson. You should never give me a script because I'm always going to go off of it. I just want to let everybody know that in the video, that was Rick's mother, and she just turned 101 years old. It is with great pleasure that I introduce my friend, one of your current 2018 Hall of Honor inductees, Dr. Richard Rediske, began his early education at Badger Elementary School in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He later ended at 3rd grade at Emerson Elementary, and that was due to his father's job transfer. He grew up just across the street on Campbell Road, where he thoroughly enjoyed exploring the open fields, the swamp, and the mud in his backyard long before the housing expansion over here. At a very early age, it was obvious Rick had an appreciation and a great interest for water, for science, and for music. His career path in environmental health science would come as no surprise to anyone who knew him. The Rediske family Sunday afternoon drives would often include the scenic River Road route. There were often family outings at Kaiser Lake as well as Lake Laramie. This was fascinating for Rick. His parents gifted him with a chemistry set and a microscope when he was in grade school. He was always in the basement doing experiments, using an old oak library table as a lab bench. He still has that old oak table today, complete with all the burn marks and the chemical spills. Rick obviously had, should I say, a very interesting personal library that nourished his young scientific brain, because his teacher sent a note home. Actually, she wrote it on his report card, and it says, "Does not read good books outside of class," because he was continuously talking about outer space and rocket ships. The teacher also went around the room and asked each student what they wanted to be when they grew up. Rick answered that he aspired to be Ricky Nelson. This immediately prompted another note being sent home, advising his parents that he definitely lived in a fantasy world. Rick's passion for music landed him a guitarist position in several local bands when he was in high school. His big break actually came, however, when he auditioned with Marion Zemper. Many of you will remember him as Big Z. And he landed a spot playing a guitar with the Stingrays, which was a very popular local band. That band later became the Blue Haze, and Rick actually earned enough money to pay for 2 years of college by playing at sock hops and dances. When I reviewed this with Rick, he said, "Do you think the audience will know what a sock hop is?" Rick's passions have always remained in sight. Imagine my excitement, along with my fellow classmates, when Rick agreed to reunite with some of those band members and recently played at a Let's Get Together event, and then later at his 45th class reunion. This science guy from Sydney High, as he sometimes refers to himself, recently posted in social media the most calming video of a beautiful trickling stream that was so captivating, I found myself watching it over and over and over. He later shared with me that this was the very stream that was an inspiration for his professional career. That little stream is located off Canal Feeder Trail in Sydney, and it serves to him as a reminder of a George Washington Carver quote. "I love to think of nature as unlimited broadcasting stations through which God speaks to us every day, every hour, and every moment of our lives, if we will only tune in." The previous video you saw of Rick outlined his current and past professional positions, along with his many prestigious awards and achievements, but I also feel we should recognize him for the many hours of expert technical advice that he so graciously donated to the EPA, the state of Michigan, and to the International Joint Commission. Volunteer work in Ghana was life-changing for Rick. The concept of Sankofa has great meaning to him, as it is a symbol of a bird reaching back to get an egg. It means to take something treasured from the past and carry it forward. Rick has shared with me that he feels so very, very blessed in the fact that he has been able to take the love of water and music and the education from Sydney High School and carry them forward into his future. And certainly they will be carried on into his retirement. Beyond recognition for his professional career, Rick is admired by so many for his integrity, his faith, his love of family, giving back, dedication to all students, dedication to his community, and the sharing of his musical talents and abilities. He served his community as a planning commissioner for 15 years, an assistant scoutmaster for the local Boy Scout troop, a science Olympiad coach for the local schools, and a praise teach musician at Livestream Church. Ladies and gentlemen, there have been so many that have benefited from his goodwill. I'm gonna cry. And we should all be so very thankful and grateful for the enormous contribution he has made to environmental preservation. Dr. Richard Rediske has truly made a difference. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so extremely honored to introduce Dr. Richard Rediske.
I wanted to thank Becky for that wonderful introduction and also mention that she was the one that videotaped my mother, and my mother was very disappointed that she couldn't be here, and you can tell that she loves her son, and I love my mother tremendously. And this was a really personal touch. I really appreciate Becky doing this, and Greg Snyder and Dave, everybody putting that in the video, because that's something very personal to me, and it was just wonderful to see that, and I look forward to playing that back for my mom, probably tomorrow or whenever I can get a copy of it. So thank you. And the other thing about Becky is, she does a lot of international travel conferences, and I'm kind of an academic scientist, and it always helps to have somebody that has that background to introduce you. And I also wanted to thank Susan Russell. She was inducted last year, and she wrote my application, or filled out my application for the Hall of Honor. And her expertise is corporate name branding and imaging of corporations, and I'm sure she added a lot to my application. I want to thank the Hall of Honor Committee. It's really wonderful that you're doing this, and I really enjoy looking at over all the people that are part of the Hall of Honor, and all the diversity of service, the diversity of careers. Sydney High must be doing something right to be an integral part of such a wide variety of talent and such a wide variety of service that comes out of the graduates here. And it's a real pleasure to have the honor myself to be part of this group, and I thank the committee very much for that award. In talking about why or how I got here, I certainly want to reflect on parents, the Sydney High School, and also the community. And as was mentioned in the invocation, community and career and family are so interwoven, and I certainly would not be here without tremendous support from all three areas. And first of all, I want to acknowledge my parents. My father had a 9th grade education, and in 9th grade he decided to go to technical school and was trained in drafting and being a machinist. So he never had a high school degree, and he always said, get your education. It's the most important thing in your life. And he didn't know a lot about science, but he saw that I was interested in science, and he would go to the Piqua Goodwill and buy science books for me as a kid. He would buy old high school textbooks, he'd buy old, entry-level college textbooks, he'd buy picture books, but he would buy anything that he recognized the power of books, and he bought me those, and he also bought them for my brother. My brother was also a PhD, so just that going out and encouraging and trying to foster talent is so important. And I remember one of the best gifts of my life was a box of Popular Mechanics magazines. It was like 5 years, and he paid like $2 for it at the Goodwill store. And in there was a whole year of chemistry experiments. It said, "Fun with halogens." Can you imagine, with my chemistry lab and something that said, the other one was how to make dangerous acids safely at home. And then my favorite one was how to make flash paper, and it said, imagine the look on your face when the paper catches on fire in your friend's hand. All this stuff would be totally illegal now, but I had that stuff, and I was able to figure out how to do it just by reading it, and he gave me the space, and I did a lot of things that I shouldn't have done in the basement and whatnot, but it was a chance to explore, a chance to discover, and that's what science is all about. So my father was certainly a tremendous part of my life, and the other thing that he did for me was I guess one of the things that was a little questionable with my parents is they saw my musical ability and they bought me an accordion. So if you're from Milwaukee, playing accordion is cool, but it wasn't the coolest thing when I moved here. So in fact, my accordion career, this is one of my stories, my accordion career came to an end in 6th grade when I was supposed to play for an assembly. And I actually was really good at accordion. I went to Cedar Point, a couple competitions and everything, but I was putting my accordion on, and one of the kids in the audience said, it straps on like a bra. That was the end of my career as an accordion player. And again, my father came through. He would always take me to secondhand stores on Saturday morning, and he'd look through things. And on the wall of one of those stores was a guitar sitting up on the top there. And I really wanted that. I wanted to play guitar. And I remember going in there for months and seeing that guitar there and just oogling over it. And then one time after Thanksgiving, I went there with him and it was gone. And I was just crushed. That guitar that I wanted so bad was gone, but it showed up underneath the Christmas tree. So, it's just, to have somebody that, does those things and looks at your passions and your interests, it's just tremendous. And then my mother, you've had a chance to see her. She's the perfect model of selfless grace and giving. I couldn't ask for a better mother to look after me. And to this day, she's fighting the ravages of old age. I can still walk in there and, she has a smile for me and a hug, and we can still share a piece of chocolate and Casano's pizza together. And, it's just wonderful to have that strength. And, I hope I can, go through old age the way she has. She's done it so gracefully, and she's been at Dorothy Love for 30 years, living in the houses and most recently in assisted living, and she had over 3,000 hours, service hours there, working in the beauty shop. She's a beautician, and she's one of the few people that does the old-fashioned permanents, the ones that really smell. I can still remember her doing those, but anyway, I had certainly wonderful parents, and I'm definitely a product of their giving. Sydney schools were pivotal for me. I remember in 5th grade I had this wonderful teacher named Mrs. Heineman, and I just want to say that one of the best things you can do is be a teacher. And we heard a lot about a great art teacher. You impact so many lives. And what she did in 5th grade was she saw that I was interested in science, and she would always cut out articles from National Geographic or magazines about science and give them to me. And it was just a treat to come in, and then sometimes she'd surprise me with something really interesting about fish or about outer space or or about planets. She would read these things and then give them to me, and I use that today when I'm a professor. Is whenever I find students that are interested, the first thing I do is give them articles to read. There's nothing better than you can do to inspire than doing something like that. And then moving on into 11th grade, I had 2 wonderful teachers there, Mr. Steffen, and I see he's in the Hall of Honor. He actually gave me quite a kick because I was able to see things and write about things, but I couldn't see the deeper meaning at all. I just saw, something there like the sky or whatever. And I actually got a C in my first semester of English because I couldn't see deeper meanings in literature or anything like that. And I was pretty bummed out about that, but I kind of came around and thought about it, and he always would say, look at that again. You're trying to get the meaning and you get part of the meaning, but he'd always say, look at it again. And one day it clicked, and I got an A the following semester because I finally saw all this stuff, and it was just an opening just to be able to see what artists were talking about. I didn't see that before, but he brought that gift to me, and I To this day, I always, when I'm talking to my students, they get part of the meeting but not the whole thing, I always say, look at it again. Look at it one more time. So, very, very important part. Mrs. Leisner, what a wonderful chemistry teacher. She was always doing lots of demonstrations in class, and the other thing about her was she would take very complicated equations and she would break them down into real simple things. And equations are complicated, but they're always made up of simple, little simple pieces. So I was able to learn chemistry really well from her. I got a very solid background, and her biggest gift to me was the fact that she recognized that I was interested in chemistry, and there was a few other students that were, and she opened the lab up at lunchtime and said, come in and, explore chemistry with me. And she would challenge us, we'd dissolve something in a lab, and then she'd come back and tell us, well, how can we get that out of solution now? Just pose those little problems. And, we wound up doing some experiments we shouldn't have done there too, because, she had metallic sodium, and it was always fun to, sneak off a piece of it and throw it in the water and watch it blow up. And one day Mike Wheeler took that and threw it in the toilet, and it blew up in one of the restrooms. I think that was kind of the end of, the end of that. But anyway, just that little bit of extra that she, showing us that we could come in and learn more, and I carry that forward today too, because the lab that I have, I always leave it open to students, and some students take advantage of that. Most of the students don't, but the ones that do have went on. I've got one student that's a neurosurgeon at Case Western, and he was always hanging around the lab. And I've got another student that's a biochemist at Johns Hopkins. The people that are really motivated, if you just give them that opportunity, it'll pay off. And there's nothing better than for an educator, somebody that's involved in teaching, to see students go on and do great things. Going on into high school, into Project 60, I'm in the education business, and I tell people about Project 60, and they just say, where did you go to school at? They're thinking that I'm going to a fancy, school out east or something like that. But Project 60 was really a wonderful program, and I think everybody that went through that really benefited from it. And it was just setting a group of students aside, and we didn't have to follow the normal hours, and we met in, we didn't have the regular type classrooms or anything. We met in groups and things like that, and it was just a wonderful learning experience. And the head of that whole program was Mr. Sherrill Edler, and what a wonderful teacher he was. He taught English, and I was a scientist, but at that time I was able to see deeper meanings and things by then. And he would get up and do lectures, and he'd act out parts. He was into theater and things like that, and I can still remember him getting up there and going through Dante's Inferno in 10 minutes, acting out the different levels. I mean, he was just a master lecturer, but the real gift to his method of teaching, and I carry that one forward too, is that he constantly had us read, and then we'd have to reflect in discussion sections, and then we'd have to journal. And we had to journal and journal and journal, and it was just the constant reading, reflecting, and journaling that really, anybody that went through that and took it seriously really came away with a real good knowledge of how to read something, get the information, reflect, and talk about it. And that was an incredible gift to have before going on into college for myself. And then finally, Mrs. Brandewy, what a wonderful teacher. Every day she said math is fun. Can you imagine math is fun? And she convinced all of us. I mean, she was just an amazing teacher, and she would talk about rotating parabolas in three dimensions, and she'd take the complicated equations and make them easy too. And showing the strength of her program, when I went off to college, I took advanced place calculus from her, and I placed in the calculus 3. So that was, I should have never done that because I got killed in calculus 3. It was really hard, But I only had to take one other math class for my entire career in chemistry and sciences. based on the strength of her teaching. So, you know, Sydney High was pivotal in my career, and the concept of Sankofa, like Becky was talking about, I carry forward, you know, a lot of things that I learned how to teach. I can't go back, it's in the past, but I'm carrying all those things forward in the way I teach students. And, you know, it prepared me very well, and it also is something that I use to prepare my students with in the future. So, you know, Sydney High was just a wonderful place for me to go to school. The last thing I'd like to say is about the community. And, you know, Sydney has a lot of water around it, you know, the Miami River and Chihuahua Park, lots of nice natural resources and things like that. But the one thing that I got out of Sydney more than ever was just the fact that people look after each other, and it was amazing to have the local disc jockey, you know, see some talent in me and get me in a band and look over me and mentor me and as a musician. Marion Zimfer, you know, a community member that you know, went way over the top in terms of working with the people that were in his band. Very important. And then, you know, the story about my father sending me to the water department. You know, I didn't know what to do with my life. He said, you know, you like water, why don't you go to the water department? It was a, oh. But anyway, I called the water department the next day, and the secretary said, hey Ron, I heard this on the, you know, I was on the phone and I heard her talking in the background. He said, hey Ron, there's a Sydney student that's going to Bowling Green that knows some that's in chemistry. He wants a, you know, a part-time job. Is there anything available? And I heard him say, what's his last name? And Rediske, and you know, I'm the only Rediske to ever have gone. My brother too, but you know, it's not a common name here. And it turns out his son was in my class, and he said, yeah, I think he's in my son's class, so send him down. So I went down to the water department, and they were having a problem with implementing a fluoride test, and they were using an electrode, and I was able to troubleshoot, you know, why it wasn't working. It was pretty simple. They were using standard graph paper instead of logarithmic graph paper, and the water was really cold. It had to be at the same temperature. You know, it wasn't too hard to figure out, but you know, he was really impressed that I was able to do that in one day. So he said, you know, why don't you spend the rest of the week working with the water department staff? And it was just incredible. I got to go out and look at the distribution, the water towers, all the pumps, and then I got to look at all the, you know, different filtration and all of the equipment that was being used, the disinfection. And that 1 week, you know, pretty much set me for, you know, my career. Just the fact that, again, I'm in a small town. I get to talk with the director of the water department, and he takes the time to sit back and mentor me. And then a little bit later, I got asked to help set up a laboratory for industrial waste analysis at the wastewater treatment system. I met a wonderful man named Henry Walther, who was the director of the wastewater system. And he gave me the opportunity to set the lab up. At that time, Sydney had a rescue squad, and they converted the rescue squad to the mobile laboratory. And I was in seventh heaven. I mean, I had a ambulance that could go over, you know, 150 miles an hour. I mean, I never took it up that high, but and then it had all the sirens and things like that, and the flashing lights. And I would drive down Vandermark, going back the back way to the wastewater plant. And sometimes I put those sirens on, and, you know. But it was just a great opportunity to apply chemistry and again learn about wastewater treatment. And I learned enough about wastewater treatment that when I went off to college, you know, I could, you know, be very knowledgeable about that. And the nicest thing that Henry did for me was, in my video I talked about that I had a kind of a bad year, my junior year of college, and my grade point was 3.59. It was pretty good, but you know, going to University of Michigan, you know, there's people with 3 9s and 4 points going there. And he always said that he knew a professor at University of Michigan. And you know, I thought it'd be much better to have professors from Bowling Green do my recommendations in Henry, but he actually called up the professor that he knew at the University of Michigan. It turns out the professor helped design some of the aspects of Sydney's wastewater plant, and he said some really good things about me. Said I was a hardworking person, fast learner, I'd be a good student for him. And when I got up to the University of Michigan, I was talking with that professor, and he said, Henry Walther called and said that you were a really good student. We were kind of thinking that you were on the edge, and we weren't sure if we wanted to admit you or not, but his recommendation, pushed you over the top. So where else but in a small town can you get something like that? So I just wanted to thank the community of Sydney for being a great place to grow up and having wonderful people that are willing to do that little extra for you. So it's really an honor to have this award tonight, and I certainly wouldn't be here without parents, without the education I got, and without the community of Sydney. And it's my pleasure tonight to thank everybody for that. So thank you.
This will conclude tonight's induction ceremony. I would like to thank all of you for attending and hope to see you here next year. We have a reception across the hall in the gym with refreshments that we would encourage you to attend. At the reception, each inductee will have their own table displaying their plaque and any other items that they have. At this time, Mr. Shue and I will lead the procession on the stage, followed by the inductees and their representatives. You may follow afterwards. As we depart, the chamber choir will lead us in the singing of our alma mater. The words of the alma mater are printed in the inside cover of the back of the program. Once again, thank you for attending this evening.